So, South Korea and Japan are now partners sharing universal values and pursuing common interests. President Yoon Suk Yeol said this ahead of the trilateral talks between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo scheduled for later this week. For more, we're joined by Professor Jeffrey Kingston this morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So, Professor, what's your take on Yoon's latest comment on Seoul-Japan relations? I mean, how can we evaluate the bilateral ties at the moment?
Well, I think that President Yoon has done a lot to try to improve relations. They really sunk to a low during the Abe administration. And he's made a number of concessions over historical issues. The problem so far is that Kishida's response has been a bit lukewarm. But I think what Yoon wanted to do is set the tone for the upcoming Camp David talks, and hopefully this will signal to its partners that it's really interested in turning the page on history. But we've been here before. 25 years ago, Kim and Obuchi also talked about, putting the past behind them in a future-oriented relationship, and we've seen how that has been derailed.
That's right. Now, speaking of the trilateral summit, President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida will meet separately for their bilateral, right? Now, the thing is, Seoul's presidential office dismissed the possibility of the Fukushima wastewater release being on the agenda at the summit. But now, why do you think the reason is?
Well, I think that they don't want Fukushima to detract from the joint statement. So I think that President Yoon looks at the Fukushima water release issue as a speed bump, and he doesn't want anything to derail the process of normalization and the institutionalization of security cooperation that people are expecting at Camp David.
Right. Security cooperation and alliance are the ones topping the agenda at the trilateral this time. Then how likely is it that the issue will be maybe discussed between Yoon and Kishida during their separate bilateral? I mean, if yes, then how might those talks go, especially with the release plan to take place as early as late this month?
Yeah, the release date remains murky, and this has been the problem all along. It's been a public relations disaster for TEPCO because the whole process has not been transparent and they haven't consulted with key stakeholders. However, I believe that President Yoon doesn't want this to get in the way of normalization and the sort of thawing of ties between these frenemies. So if they do discuss it, I think that Yoon will accept the reassurances from Kishida. And Kishida, or TEPCO, has responded to concerns that they will monitor water off the coast of Fukushima every day for a month after releases and give quick results the following day. And the idea is that this will ease anxieties. But the problem is TEPCO has generated a lot of distrust and has a deep hole to climb out of.
Right, that's exactly in line with what President had requested, that Japan provides real-time info sharing on the release and also possibly allow Korean experts to get involved in that release inspection process, right? Now, how likely is it that Japan will allow these requests?
Well, they have responded about the quick testing. I haven't heard anything about the Korean experts getting involved in the process. They did visit and inspect TEPCO's plant and the plans for the discharge. It may be a bit tricky to have them actually involved in the monitoring of the discharge, but I think both sides are eager to try to improve relations, and so I don't think they're going to allow the Fukushima water discharge to get in the way. The problem is that the publics in both countries are concerned. Fishermen in Fukushima are angry. Consumers in Korea and China are concerned. And in Japan, there's been sort of a media campaign to explain that actually China releases a whole lot more tritium into the water than the Fukushima plant release. It's sort of this sort of whataboutery and trying to shift the focus away from what has been a disastrous public relations campaign by TEPCO.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us all the way from Tokyo this morning. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you.